Today you are going to add color to your symbolic self-portrait with symbols and your letters. Your letters should be filling the page. You should have at this point traced over them. The letter outline you're tracing with a fine Sharpie, that's the thicker one. So the outline of your letters will be a little thicker and bolder. Everything else should be done in ultra fine Sharpie. And if you need to look at sources before you draw, please do. Also remember, you should have your 3 letters and a minimum of 12 symbols on here. And those 12 symbols came from our graphic organizer. Okay, so I'm going to start with my colored pencils. If you're working from home and you have more colored pencils than our basic pack that I gave you, feel free to use them. But I should see, as we're doing this, those techniques that we learned when we were blending colors in our last class. And so remember, we did the flame, where we went from where we did cool colors that blended together, and then we did one that had warm colors, look something like this. So we're going to be doing these blends where we're trying to limit the amount that you can see the transition between the two, which means layering on top of each other. So there may be areas that you want to be solid colors without any blends. I knew that my Steelers colors, I wanted them to be really dense and strong, so I'm going to use my color pencils in a heavy way, not doing much shading. But I'm going to now start adding in some blended values. And blended values could involve 2 colors when we're doing a blend, but we also could be doing just some value changes where we are doing darker areas with our colored pencil and then fading them. So in my phone, I made the border in here darker, and then I faded to light as it came to the inside. It gives it some depth. I'm going to do things like here, I started working on my paw prints. The outer border of my paw prints is darker, fading to a lighter value on the inside. I'm going to be doing some of that as well on like my paintbrush handles. They'll be darker on the edges and then fading to light in the middle. Now, I want to start doing those where I'm actually doing some color blending. I'm going to do that in my music. I know I want it to be really colorful, and I'm going to start, I already have red here at the base, so I'm going to start right in with my pink, and I'm going to do pink, and it's going to be heavy, heavy, heavy. Then it's going to fade to orange. So the orange is going to fade on top, and they're going to be overlapping where they meet. You also want to make sure that you've pulled out all of the gray pencil. I can see I missed a little bit right here. Otherwise, it will mix with your colors, and you'll get sort of dirty looking colors. So here I'm going to go dense, like I'm pushing hard. Here I'm fading on top of the pink, and I'm going to go back through one more time and go heavy with the pink, really mixing them together. Then I'm going to fade here. So I'm going to create sort of like a rainbow effect where I'm going to fade to light here, and then I'm going to put my yellow. So I did red. I let that red fade to the pink. It's just a red plus white. Here I'm going to mix my orange and my yellow, and I'm going to be overlapping and blending until I get a nice blend. It's a matter of like controlling the pressure, never going sideways and cutting across. So here's my solid yellow. I'm going to my yellow fade a little bit. Yellow, because it's the lightest one, you're going to be using that probably with the densest color. And I'm going to go to my light green. So my light green will be having an overlap area here. And then, so here's where I'm going to overlap. And I'm going to mix my yellow back into it. Really going heavy with this lighter color to make a yellow-green. And I may have to go back and forth a few times until I get a blend that I like. But I'm going to be blending colors. And then I'm going to go to a darker green. And I'm still using this light, but I'm going to make it then fade to the dark green. So it's going to fade to here. And I don't have to use, I could have gone faded to light blue, then dark blue, but I like this dark green, so I'm going to fade into this dark green where they mix. I'm going to be overlapping back and forth. So anytime I'm doing this, I am always going back and repeating. So I'm not going to finish this. You guys can figure out what you want to do, but I am going to add a few more things. Like here in my moon, I'm going to do my moon yellow, prominently yellow, and then it's going to fade to like an orange color in the background. So I'm going to do, I'm actually going to pull the yellow, I'm going to let it fade out, and I'll do my mix of yellow and orange on this back edge so my sun or my moon is not just so flat. It's going to be sort of like a yellow orange color. And I'm not going really dense with this orange. I'm just going nice and light, allowing it to fade out. You know, in areas where I've got my palm tree, I'll be starting with like my light greens first, and I'll be putting those down right on top of the lines that establish my leaves and my smaller leaves. So these are like my big leaves. And then I'm going to come through with my darker green, and I'm going to add some dark green accents in here with, you know, my coconuts. I'm going to be doing those sort of like rough and then shading with some light value on brown on top. But I want them to have that sort of shaggy, rough texture of a coconut. So this is shaggy, shaggy, shaggy. And in my sky, I'm actually thinking that I might do something like maybe a sunset or sunrise. And I'm also thinking like here in the water, so down here is my beach, and in my water here, I want to use a combination of dark blue and light blue. So I'm going to be putting down some light blue first, and I want it to look like it's got a mix. So I'm like putting this into the gaps in my fence, because up to this line is water. But I'm not coloring solid. I'm going to leave some of those empty areas. Oh, I'm trying to control a little better than that. And then I'm going to come into here and I'm going to mix some dark blue. And I want to make sure I don't leave any like halo white areas in my water. But I want a mixture of dark and light blue when I'm done. So I'll be going back and forth. And I'm always going to go in this like where it's flowing sideways, so the direction that you pull your lines also helps guide the eye into like believing that this would be water or liquid, because it's flowing. It's not static and going up and down. Okay, so I would be layering in my darks and light blues. This is my saw blade. I'd probably do that like a gray, which would be my black, shaded lightly, maybe fading to darker on the tips, and maybe fading to darker right here as it's passing behind my letter. So I'm trying to think about like if things are layering up, and I'm trying to be even and controlling like where I'm not having big heavy gouges anywhere that I don't want them, and then I'm letting it become gradually dark. I would say the goal would be always go light, and I'm going to level across. That also helps reduce the amount of pencil lines showing. So going one direction, then leveling in the other if I'm making something that's fairly solid and that I'm removing like the textured pencil lines from. Okay, so then I'd finish that. In my letters or my numbers, I'm going to do probably like a fade from one color to another. I'm going to do a fade from probably like a light violet. I happen to have a light violet, and I'm going to let it fade from a light violet at the top, and then it's going to fade to a darker violet at the bottom. So I'm going to go light violet at the top, fading to darker violet at the bottom. So I'm going to just light through here, and then I'll go back in with my darker value at the base. So I'm using those blending strategies that we learned in class to apply to the surface. Okay. So I'm getting some variation. And I don't have to just pull from, violet to dark violet, but I want to make sure that I'm not pushing colors across on the color wheel. So remember, when we're mixing analogous, or neighbors. We're not mixing yellow and violet. Yellow and violet next to each other look amazing, but mixed together, we're going to get that neutral gray. Red and green, same thing. Blue and orange, same thing. So stay away from mixing complementary colors. You should mix colors that are fairly close on the color wheel. When you have completed all parts, so you'll have today in class, you'll have Friday in class, which should be enough to complete the color. That's almost 2 hours of time dedicated to just putting color on. When you're done, photograph and submit.